All right, so let's talk about reintroducing foods that we've been without and self-testing protocols. So we have three main ones that we like to experiment with. The first one is general awareness, just paying attention to how you feel when you bring something out and you bring it back in. The second one would be intuitive self-testing, and the third one would be pulse testing. So let's talk about each one of those. All right, with general awareness, basically we're just paying attention to how we feel when we remove a food for a specific period of time, and then also paying attention to how we feel when we bring it back in. And what we're looking for are things like energy level changes, digestion clearing up or getting worse, skin issues clearing up or getting worse, having an increased pulse rate or a lowered pulse rate, sleep patterns improving or getting worse, and then your mood and your focus and your mental clarity and your emotions. That's a really big indicator for me. When I have something off, I get kind of irritable. And then just how we feel overall and in general. All right, if we just commit to this testing process over time, we're going to learn something about ourselves. Just paying attention to how we feel when we bring something out and we bring something back in. All right, the second one would be a little bit more formal of a testing protocol. We call it intuitive self-testing. So let's talk a little bit about what we call lingual neural receptors. So inside our mouth, we have what is known as lingual neural receptors. Lingual neural meaning that it's lingual in the mouth and it communicates with the brain. And so ideally, we should have this ability to put something into our mouth and then our body immediately communicate to us whether it's okay to swallow it or not, right? We have this innate intelligence that we've kind of lost touch with. But if we look at ancestral populations, traditional populations, and even people that try to go live on their own up in the mountains, we call those mountain men, the way that they figure out what are appropriate foods to eat is they would take a food or a nutrient or a leaf or a plant and they would put it in their mouth and they would super masticate it. And then they would pay attention to how they feel, just holding it in their mouth. If they started to notice some irritation or some inflammation or some congestion or allergy-like symptoms, then they would know that that's probably something they don't want to consume. All right, but then if they didn't experience anything immediately, they could chew it and super masticate it and swallow it in really small amounts. And again, pay attention to how they feel. If they got diarrhea from freaking swallowing this small amount of food, or if they got some kind of other digestive upset or some other symptoms popped up that were noticeable, then they would probably know that that's probably not something they want to consume, or maybe they need to prepare it in a specific way to mitigate the things that are causing problems. All right. But then if that felt okay, they could consume it in larger amounts. And over time, this is how we figured out which foods were appropriate and which foods weren't. So we still have this innate ability inside of us. We just have to tap into it. So to do intuitive self-testing, we would want to prepare the food or the food group that we are trying to test. All right, and this is something that we've been without for a little bit. Now we're trying to figure out if this is something that once we bring it back in that we have some kind of problem with. So when we prepare that food to consume, we want to do it without any confounding variables. So let's say I'm preparing some white rice. I would not want to prepare that white rice with some butter and a bunch of spices and seasonings and sauces, because if I have some kind of reaction to it, I wouldn't know if it's the white rice or all those other confounding variables. So I want to prepare it as pristine as possible. And then once it's prepared, I want to take a seat and get calm and relaxed so that I can be aware and pay attention to any signals my body gives me. All right, then once I've been relaxed, we recommend sitting there for about 30 seconds and maybe doing a little bit of meditation. Once I'm calm and relaxed, I want to put some of that food or nutrient inside my mouth. I want to chew it and salivate and let it register with those lingual neural receptors. I don't want to swallow it, or I want to try not to swallow. It's kind of hard to do, but I definitely want to hold it in my mouth so that it registers. Hold it in your mouth for about 30 seconds. And then you want to pay attention to how you feel. And you want to sit there and pay attention to any kind of reactions. The most typical reactions people experience are going to be like a hot flash or flush, maybe a pulse increase, maybe feeling tired immediately, having some kind of a digestive upset, and then maybe a little bit of a mood shift. Right? Now, if we don't notice anything in the moment, or even if we do, we want to go ahead and consume that food with our meal. I mean, you could consume it by itself if you want to, but you can consume it with the meal. And then really just start to pay attention to how you feel, and you want to consume it for a total of 3 days. All right, and you want to consume a decent amount of it. So if we're doing like a safe starch like white rice, we definitely want to hit our 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup max. And we want to do that consistently for a few days and pay attention to how we look, feel, and perform, and see if we notice anything like digestive issues, allergic symptoms, being tired or lethargic, increased cravings for other foods. You know, sometimes when people are bringing back in safe starches, some safe starches make them want to crave other sugary foods. All right, and then also, like we mentioned before, noticing mood changes, your focus, your mental clarity, and then any other symptoms improving or getting worse. All right, so that's what we consider intuitive self-testing. All right, now if you want to take your intuitive testing to another level, you can incorporate pulse testing with your intuitive testing. All right, now the pulse can be very indicative of the body being in a calm and relaxed state or a stressed out state. The lower your pulse, typically the calmer and relaxed you are, the higher your pulse, the more stressed out you are. So if we can incorporate a pulse test before and after specific foods, we may get some insights as to what foods are causing us problems. So we'd follow that same process with intuitive testing. After we prepared our food, we'd sit down, get into a calm and relaxed state for about 30 seconds, and then while we're in that calm and relaxed state, we want to take a full resting 1-minute pulse. We want to mentally note that or record it, and then we would take that food or nutrient, put it in our mouth, chew it, salivate, let it register with our lingual neural receptors for at least 30 seconds, and then while it's in our mouth, take another full 1-minute pulse. And if we have an increase of 4 beats per minute or more, that food is problematic for us at that point in our life. Right? The more the increase, the more problematic the food. And we can do this around any and all foods. We can start with doing it around meals. We can do it around specific foods. It's super insightful. It's one of our favorite tests that we do. All right, so going forward, how do we take this information and put it into practice? Choose your food or your food group to go without. Go for a specified period of time. Reintroduce with awareness, and that may mean at a minimum using your general awareness, but you may also want to incorporate formal intuitive testing, going through the process that we just laid out, or adding to your intuitive testing a little bit of pulse testing. All right?